Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the Underground. Another packed week of news it has been, hasn't it? However, the theme for this week has most certainly been cyber attacks, so let's get right to it. Starting off with probably the more impacting event for most Americans, there was yet another major cellular outage throughout the United States that for some people lasted just a few minutes, for others it is still impacting. So for those of you who have not heard about this or are not impacted by it, a few days ago, both Verizon and AT&T and also some U.S. cellular customers reported that they had service interruptions with their cell phones. So all total, it seems like around 24 to 28, depending on which report you read, states were affected. So, a little over half the country, depending on which report you go by. It seems like also there are quite a few AT&T customers still without service or with intermittent service over the past few days. A lot of people I'm seeing on social media are saying AT&T says they fixed the issue for them, however they haven't. So that seems to be a very common trend with some of these more questionable incidents. So far, I haven't seen any indications as to why this outage occurred, nor why did it occur on three separate systems all at exactly the same time. That is a very, very suspicious detail because Verizon, AT&T, and US Cellular all maintain their separate towers. There's very little crossover between the three companies as far as I know. So they maintain their own kind of infrastructure. So when you have three companies go down all at once, that tends to suggest there's probably something nefarious behind it. But again, we just don't know. There hasn't been really much information released on that front. Continuing on with the sort of questionably, possibly nefarious incidents, there was another incident involving a cargo ship and a bridge. A few days ago, the Ravenel Bridge in Charleston, South Carolina was shut down for just a few minutes out of an abundance of caution while there was a runaway cargo ship. So I'll throw the video up for you guys to see. It looks kind of boring, from kind of the shore perspective of things. However, the story so far, again, very few details are public, but the story so far is that this cargo vessel, the MSC Michigan 7, had a stuck throttle. So, on big cargo ships, it's kind of hard to explain. However, it seems as though the throttle for the vessel was stuck on, flank speed, or whatever it's called for civilian vessels, the maximum speed for the vessel, and it was not responding to engine commands. So the crew, very adeptly, it looks like they were able to thread the needle to go actually underneath the bridge and make sure that nothing happened as a result of this incident. Two people were injured, people who were in small craft near sort of like the edge of the harbor. They got hit with the wake. Obviously a full speed ship is going to cause a significant wake, and there were a couple of injuries. It actually did send a couple of people to the hospital. But it seems like minor injuries. As far as what was the cause of the incident, nobody knows, or if they do know, they're not saying. So the vessel is still at anchor outside Charleston Harbor while the U.S. Coast Guard investigates. Again, it's hard to say, was this something more nefarious? Was this kind of an innocent mistake or something like that? Who knows? Really, you just kind of have to understand that you're not going to get the full story a lot of times with this, and then be okay with making decisions in that sort of, contested environment. So, again, not a super great week for critical infrastructure. Moving outside the United States, over to Europe this week to keep things kind of short, there was another cyber event in the UK. So, a couple of days ago, it seems like the majority of hospitals in London were actually shut down and or impacted in some way by what has been publicly stated was a deliberate cyber attack. So again, most hospitals shut down. It seems like the software that they use to manage blood banks was probably hit the most. And of course, in a hospital, that kind of impacts things. So people who had regular routine surgeries, that was shut down. They had to reschedule. And I also have seen reports that some emergency services were affected. Now, again, this kind of brings up a huge problem within the medical industry and sort of the, emergency services in general, is that when it comes to trauma centers, I'm not sure how they do things in the UK, but in the United States, what is supposed to happen is basically a level 1 trauma center within a hospital is supposed to be kind of like its own living ecosystem. It's supposed to have its own power supply. It's supposed to have its own containment facilities. It's supposed to basically be a little mini hospital inside the hospital. So when you see reports that a cyber attack brought something down and it may have included the trauma center, that's a little strange. Well, it's not strange. It's just not how it's supposed to be. There's supposed to be a level of the trauma centers in most hospitals are supposed to be hardened facilities against things like this. They're supposed to be able to function, even if you've got nothing but a pad and paper, they're supposed to be able to function. I'm not saying that didn't happen with this case. It just seems like the vulnerabilities of cyber systems and computerized systems, those vulnerabilities have been creeping in the name of efficiency. And it seems like that may be causing some problems because, if it's connected to the internet, if there's some kind of, non-air gap system or even for air gap systems, right, it brings vulnerabilities in, and things like this can strike at the worst possible time. So, again, for those working in the healthcare field who might be, watching this or, seeing these events, this is really, really, really a very important reminder that for those people working in critical infrastructure, in healthcare, in emergency services, in any form or fashion, your institution may be obsessed with efficiency. They may be obsessed with going with, the cheapest solution for things. But when it comes down to it, when you have the cyber attack affect you, when you're standing there and it's the middle of your shift, you are the one who's going to have to be dealing with it. So, I really do think that the majority of solutions for these kinds of cyber events and other critical infrastructure events lie with the single worker, with the single employee who says, you know what, let's create a paper backup for this, system just in case. Let me write some notes down instead of taking notes on my phone. Let me write them down on a piece of paper. That sort of thing. Now, again, there's probably policies against that, in some career fields, but still, man, look, you don't want to be on the receiving end of a cyber attack, and you're the one who has to deal with it. So, again, just a helpful reminder. There's not a whole lot of information with stories like this, for obvious reasons, but again, just a reminder to be careful and start planning, because the people usually running these institutions, they couldn't care less. They're really just trying to maintain efficiency. So again, just a reminder. And wrapping things up, keep things kind of short today, wrapping things up with the Russian Black Sea Fleet, I did want to briefly mention that the past few days has been host to significant Russian naval activity. Something that's not entirely uncommon, however, it does signal something's getting ready to happen. Most of the Russian Black Sea Fleet out of Novorossiysk has departed port. So, again, we can tell this from open source satellite imagery, which you can see for yourselves. There was a shot this morning from Sentinel, however, there's clouds over the target in typical fashion. So I have to wait for a SAR shot to come overhead to actually punch through those clouds and see what's going on. But it looks like from between June 3rd and June 6th, the majority of Novorossiysk has been emptied out. You can actually see in some of these images where the ships were going. And I guess the bottom line is, what does this mean? Where are these ships going? I don't know. It looks like there were a lot of landing craft, though, so it's really hard to say what's going to happen. They could be just doing a simple port transfer over to Crimea to Sevastopol. However, it seems like this may be either some pretty substantial combat action, or an exercise, or just something to throw us off, or a posturing move. So it could be anything. I guess time will tell to see what the Russians are up to this time. Sort of on the same front, I forgot to mention in the United States, Russia has planned a naval exercise with Cuba to take place this coming week. So in case you see any reports freaking out about it, it's normal, well, semi-normal. They occasionally do exercises with Cuba or down in the Caribbean area. They're going to be using 3 surface vessels, probably the same 3 vessels as last time, along with a submarine. So again, people tend to freak out when these sorts of things happen, but I'm not really worried about it. You know, the Russians are definitely trying to posture and poke and do what they can due to the events going on around the world. So, again, kind of a busy week, but not a whole lot to really sink our teeth into as far as analysis goes. It's one of those weeks where it's like, cool, that happened. Let's, move on. So, wrapping things up and keeping things kind of short today, I'll mention the intercepted GhostNet reports, the things that I picked up from my station here. I've got quite a few news reports throughout the week. However, I was only able to get some pieces of messages on Thursday. So, this is what I was able to pick up from my own local station here. A few people talking about the weather out in the Midwest and the West region, especially in Texas and Oklahoma and places like that. Again, just getting hammered with storms this time of year. Also, somebody was talking about an explosion in Sayreville, New Jersey at the power plant there. I looked that up and I forgot to mention that. That was a couple of weeks ago. There was an explosion there, so hard to say what the source of that was, but I wish I could have gotten more of that report, but it was really, really faint coming in for me, so I wasn't able to really get it that well. And then also another partial report I picked up, somebody was talking about sort of international incidents with regards to Germany and the United States and Ukraine and the whole munitions thing, where the United States has said that, well, Ukraine can now strike targets in Russia more deliberately with U.S. munitions, and same thing with Germany as well. So again, somebody talking about the international escalations, but again, I only got just a piece of that report. So kind of a quick day. I know it's been really busy for a lot of people, so I thought I would kind of keep this one short. This time of year starts getting pretty busy. However, there's oftentimes not a whole lot of analysis to be made for some of these events. We just kind of have to wait and see how these things work out, and just be mindful, especially with the potential for cyber attacks. There's an election coming up in the UK. There's an election coming up in the United States, and every single election season, but especially this one, it seems like things just start being impacted all over the country and all around the world. You see a lot of stuff kicking up and kicking off. So again, something to be mindful of. There's probably not a whole lot that most people can do with regards to these things like this, but just be careful, be mindful, pay attention, try to do better. And recognize that very, very small actions on the part of the individual person who tries to care about bettering their world, that's really going to make a lot of difference. So again, food for thought to kind of close on today. But here are your sources for the week. Again, not a whole lot. Just kind of keep things pretty light this time around. And I guess we'll call it a day. So again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for contributing this week. And I guess we will see you next week. So I'll see you guys again on Monday, and we'll start yet another week of these crazy times, right? So thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time. And as always, fight in the shade.